Anyway, so Paddy and myself are going to talk a wee bit about our history involvement in user-led research and surveys, because it's interesting how people make a distinction between surveys and research and all the rest. And so the first slide will be around research stroke surveys, and that's primarily from Paddy's perspective, because he's involved in it far longer than I have been in the Ireland of Ireland. And I'll talk a wee bit from the other side, some of the research I've been involved in as well.
So, if we go back to 2000, the first piece of, well, one of the first pieces of research that was carried out by the Irish Advocacy Network was around the Monaghan Home Treatment Team. They set up in 1998. There were an audit, a follow-up survey done in 1999, and we also done the one in 2000. So that was probably our first introduction as coming from the service user community into research, and sort of we learned on our feet, put it that way, and it was presented at the International Mental Health Network conference in Florence in Italy in 2000, or early 2001, I can't remember. The second piece was the Midland Health Board 2001, and that was a sort of a strange piece that the Midland Health Board asked. They were wanting to change their services from an institutionalised service to try and build a community service within the Midland Health Board, the old Midland Health Board, and they asked us to carry out this piece of work for them across all of their services. That included inpatient, outpatient, day hospitals, some of the voluntary service partners that was alongside them, and we thought it was just a matter of turning up. The users designed their questionnaire and all that, but we had to go through this whole ethical approval, and it was our first introduction into it, and sitting at these meetings with people in grey suits and blue shirts and ties, nearly all male, deciding whether or not these questions were ethical, and I hadn't an understanding of what ethical was. And in those early days, I probably learned to have a bit more patience about me now than then. And those early days, I used to sit at home and maybe hit the table of thumb and say, what the fuck is this all about, or what are you trying to do? Are you trying to stop the whole thing? But anyway, that was the second piece. The third piece was Focus and Minds, Southern Health Board 2002, a review of mental health services in the North Western Health Board 2003-2004. And the last piece was What We Heard, the Fed a Vision for Change. And that was probably an important piece because it looked at, Fiona could probably correct me if I'm wrong, 100 people who were in long-term care within psychiatric services, and it was to find out what they thought of being in a long-term institution, what was their wishes and dreams, what way they wanted to move on, or what way they wanted services to work for them. So that was the last piece in 2006, and then Liz has already worked on the Pathways projects, and we're all well aware of them pieces of work. So that was the sort of the early introduction, and a lot of it was around service users and service users input into service change plans and different things like that. And whilst we've spent a lot of time sort of building up knowledge, our own knowledge of how to do these things, and learning from others, and looking at the work of our other two speakers this morning, and trying to replicate what they were doing and bringing those sort of practices into place, so it was very, very useful for us. But I suppose before we move on, my sort of concern now, and it's not a concern, my interest is that we've sort of, I believe, moved to the place that everything's around service user research, and we're going down this sort of eliciting more and more information around service user research. I have personally become interested in talking about service refusers, people who don't use services, who maybe had a one-off contact with services and for whatever reason has never come back into them. For example, the other evening I was chatting to a man 27 years ago. He was admitted for 3 weeks. He has left the service, has never been back in it, still lives with the problems that were on there from the very first day, but has found other ways. And he talks to him. It was the first time I ever heard somebody talking about I'm a service refuser. And I thought to myself, this chap's on to something, because I've been starting to think. So I believe that there's a bulk of work that needs to be done around the service refuser. What is it that makes them different? How is it that they can adapt and change their lives after that first breakdown, or whatever it is, or that link into the institution? And I believe that if we started looking into that area, there's probably a whole lot of answers that we could use, that we could bring into modern day thinking, into the development of new types of services. So that's basically where I am coming from, that I'm on at the minute. So Jim, I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, I just talk about three that I've been specifically involved in. And one, unfortunately, my good friend Joan Boyle here isn't here today. And it's interesting that several of us will know Joan, but she has actually had a book just recently published as well on her own experiences. And so if any of you would like a copy of that, I'm sure you can get to hold it for it. And I know how she writes. She's absolutely a beautiful writer. So, actually, she gave me a draft of it before she even got it published, and thought it was wonderful. So. But the three pieces I've been involved in specifically is this top one here, I say with Joan and myself, approved the acute psychiatric hospital service according to basically a big long, I'm not going to say the title. That was just published early this year in the journal Issues in Mental Health Nursing, sorry, I should say. And interestingly enough, it was the first time I submitted it anywhere, and it was accepted right away, which is kind of interesting. And one of the reviewers, it was interesting to say, what she said was that, why is this still happening? That was her question. So basically we went around and this was in Northern Ireland specifically now, we ran 10 focus groups in acute psychiatric units. The participants were from 12 psychiatric units. Sometimes we brought 2 units together to gather enough people. I can't remember the specific numbers because I'm trying to look through this morning, kind of need to remind myself of, but around about 52 people within focus groups we interviewed. We asked people's experiences in hospital. But one of the questions we asked was, how do you cope in hospital? What are your coping strategies? Because this came from actually Strategies for Living, who gave us the funding and supported us and trained us. Thanks very much, Alison. And so we got that from him. But their title, Strategies for Living, we thought was absolutely wonderful. So we wanted to know what people's strategies for living were in hospital. And I'm not going into the whole details of the findings of it, but I suppose if I wanted to sum it up, I would say that hospital isn't conducive to recovery. That's probably one of the main findings. Secondly, the three kind of areas which need much improvement are information, communication and relationships, particularly relationships between staff and patients. And they were the three probably main areas we think need improved in that particular environment. Now the second part here, Paddy and myself, funding was primarily Paddy from Age Opportunity, and we put a proposal in to look at the advocacy needs of the elderly, people at risk, but also who are actually using long-term services, who have been long-term patients. We interviewed 3 groups really to look at the advocacy needs of this specific group. We looked at what we would call as an at-risk group, and the literature would say particularly women living on their own, believe it or not, so we had primarily a grouping around that. We interviewed mental health professionals who were involved in mental health elderly services, and then we also interviewed a group of long-term patients. Basically, I can't say they're long-term patients because they're actually living in a hospital at the time, but they were coming from long-term institutional care. And interestingly enough, from that, we found, surprise, surprise, there is a need for advocacy. That's what people are saying. But the most interesting thing we found, primarily through observation now, and you may find this kind of skewed in some sense, because our bias and service user involvement quite often is seen as biased. But when we interviewed the elderly group who were coming out of institutional care, they had very little to say. And they were very apathetic and all the rest, so that made us actually very sympathetic towards them. But it also, the silence said that to us, that there's a greater need for this particular silent group for advocacy than it was for the other groups. Does that make sense? Now you can say, well, that's just you being biased with your research. I mean, you really didn't get that answer from people. But it was so sad to see, actually to sit with them and ask them questions, and they're sitting there waiting for the next cup of coffee or tea to come along. That was their main concern. Do you know what I'm saying? They weren't really interested about the rest of my life, what I want to do with my life. They were almost given up. And I don't want to be kind of negative there and kind of stigmatise running, but that was our observation. So we put that in the report, that we think specifically this group really needs advocacy. Sorry,
Jim, was this in South Ireland or North?
This is Cork, down in West Cork.
Arden-Kerry.
Yeah.
Just a small
Yep.
community.
Yep. 3 groups, and I can't remember, something like 30 participants in total or something. Who was the most vocal group? The professionals. They were the ones who could tell you their needs more than the people themselves, which is an interesting thing.